Solving a problem in home care is both people and technology, and allying both together to find a solution in a way that our software really helps the recruiter and agency, and it needs alignment with their internal operations to work. And AI is helping us do more automation, but it's not a magic pill. Like everybody says AI will replace workers and so on. It's not going to happen anytime soon.
You're listening to Home Care Hindsight, the podcast where we talk with home care leaders about the big mistakes they've made and the even bigger lessons they've learned along the way. I'm David Knack, head of sales here at Zingage, and I've built a career on the idea that we learn a whole lot more from our mistakes than from our successes, which is great because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten to know some of the leaders in this industry who've built amazing businesses and are super well respected. So I thought it'd be fun, instead of asking them about the great things they've accomplished, to have them tell the story of one of the biggest mistakes that they've made and how that mistake changed their thinking and the way they run their business. All right, welcome back to another episode of Home Care Hindsight, brought to you by Zingage. We're building an AI platform for home care scheduling and a whole bunch of other stuff on top of Sky Access Care, the HHA Exchange, Alaya Care, other EMRs, and super excited about the stuff that we're building to up-level teams within home care. I'm joined today by Yvan with Augusta.care. Yvan, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you so much.
Well, super excited to have you on. You guys have been in the industry for several years now. Remind me when you guys got started.
So we got started in really 2022. And we didn't know what problem to solve at that time. So here we are.
And you guys have built, a lot of institutional knowledge around recruiting and recruiting best practices and all that stuff specifically in home care. And so what are, if you had to pick like 3, 4, 5 things that you guys have really learned and honed in on as it relates to the recruiting experience, the recruiting process in home care, like what's top of mind for you all?
I mean, just to go back to how we started, like we didn't know what problems existed in recruiting or staffing in general when we started 2022. We were really a staffing agency when we started because we talked to a lot of leaders in the space, Kevin Smith, Greg Sanchez, I listened to their podcast, and it became clear that staffing is a big problem in the space. And I mean, Zingage also is part of that, right? I mean, the first thing that surprised us is how broken the whole applicant experience is. And that got us really motivated. And then that really surprised us how broken it was.
What's the biggest problem with the applicant experience in your view?
Well, when we started interviewing all these candidates, we realized that at least half of the applicants coming in could be a good fit to an agency or client and actually interested in working in the space. About half. And they were very confused about, a lot of them were new to the industry. They had been working with a family member or a friend. That was like a large percentage. And they were confused about information about the agency that we were representing, about the industry. How does it work? What is it like to be a caregiver? Tell me more. And obviously they were applying to a lot of jobs. That's known, right? So, and they were totally confused by the whole experience.
And, of that half that would be a good fit, what do you think are like the easiest ways to clean up that experience for them so that they're excited about working with an agency instead of like willing to accept a job because it's like, the lesser evil?
I mean, if you think about why they wanted this job, and it's usually an older demographic, sometimes students, it's because they want to feel that they matter and they're helping somebody and they're building a relationship. But you don't want to build a relationship with anybody. So the matching really matters, like dating. Is it going to be easy for me to get there? Am I going to be able to connect with that person, laugh, cook the food that they like, and so on, right? So the more information they know about the agency up front, and the more the agency can connect with them and tell them the information they need about the job, about their client as early as possible, so it's really memorable for them. Because all the job descriptions look the same. If you go to a website, a lot of the websites look the same. A lot of the job descriptions look the same. A lot of text. And they get confused and they get so many texts and emails about new jobs. And it's very confusing for them. If you apply to a job on Indeed, for example, I'm just taking it as an example. There's many other job boards.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's where most of the applicant volume comes through, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the big job board in the space. You get tons of emails and texts after that to apply for jobs and schedule an interview. So how do you make that as easy as possible for them to find the right agency, but also the right match to a client at the end of the day? That's what matters.
I have a very specific question about the client caregiver matching as a part of the recruiting process, which is a lot of agencies have, they've got to do both activities at once. They've got to continue to sell and get new business. They've got to continue to recruit. And sometimes those cycles aren't always exactly in alignment. And so it's often the case that you're recruiting caregivers when you don't have a client waiting in the wings for them to come on board with. And so how do you think about, or how do you see people think about messaging the client caregiver fit and doing that dating when you're kind of trying to find the date, on the client side of things? Especially when folks are starting up, you've got to continue to recruit, but you may not have the clients. But, at an early stage, if you say, no, I can't take that client on because I don't have the caregivers, that's, a really big red flag for the business.
Yeah, I mean, that problem is very complicated. There's lots of angles to it. But if you make it a bit more generic and more broad, recruiting really starts when the salesperson at the agency is trying to get clients. It doesn't start when you post a job on Indeed. So then how do you align as a business owner scheduling, sales, and recruiting? That's the key part. And once you've done that, then how you post jobs, how you market for caregivers, and then how you process them actually matters. So it's like a two-way conversation. Like, think about this, like if you're a home care agency, a caregiver is like a product. I'm a product CEO, I understand products. It's very similar to if you're a tech company that you want to build the right product for the audience that you're targeting, but you also want the sales team to understand where the product fits the best and really align those two together.
How do you see salespeople change their messaging, their positioning, like the way that they show up, especially to like referral sources, but maybe even like in families' homes, in a way that positions well and sets everybody up for success with the kinds of caregivers that you've got and that you're recruiting and that that you can find more of?
Well, I understand the recruiting part better. So at that angle, I understand better. Like Sam was in a 2-day workshop with a really good customers of ours in Florida. He realized that the recruiters were overburdened and they were asked to fill every single shift that the sales people were finding. And they had a great sales team. So kudos to them. They're growing very well. They're doing extremely well. But that's very hard because if you look at their applicant pool, like Sam spent a lot of time on studying their applicant pool. They're very good at attracting really good applicants in a certain place, certain geography in their county. And they're not very good at finding applicants in other places where they were finding clients. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. So then how do you align sales to the fact that there's probably a long-term solution and a short-term solution, but the short-term solution is perhaps the sales team should spend more time, not just sales, but marketing in areas where those good applicants are willing to go to, or the types of clients that they're willing to serve, right? So, and the other angle is long-term, if there's an area that the agency wants to go into, you got to think about the talent strategy. Do I have very specific marketing for that region? Do I have boots on the ground, people going there in community centers to kickstart the talent pool? Because referrals is huge in the space. Do you have to build an office there to be able to make it easy for them to go for an interview? All these things have to be, considered.
That kind of reminds me of, the VA recently cut their rates in some specific markets. And I was talking to a agency owner in San Antonio area. And you get outside of San Antonio and there's some really rural areas. And the bill rate was such that even though a caregiver didn't live in the place where a veteran lived, kind of way out in the sticks, it was possible to have the pay rate such that you could support getting a caregiver to go out there. And so one of the things that you said when you're like, look, if you're able to get clients in a place, but you're not able to get caregivers in that place, we've got to reassess the strategy, especially from a private pay perspective. It's not like you can go in and say, Mr. Mrs. Client's family, because you guys live in a place that it's hard for us to recruit, we're going to charge $60 an hour instead of $35 an hour. Like the private pay market just simply won't bear that. And so I think it's like, okay, we've either got to reevaluate our recruiting strategy and see if like, is it possible for us to get caregivers out there and we're just not using the right strategies? Or is this wasted effort for everybody involved because it's just not the right market for us to win? Somebody else can figure out how to recruit there. But like, if we're having success with sales and with recruiting in the same geographic area, that makes the ability to fulfill on those new clients so much better than if we're trying to figure out how to get caregivers to drive 45 minutes to get to a shift.
Absolutely. Yes. I agree with that.
Well, I want to. I know there's a lot more stuff that we're going to get into here, but I want to transition to a part of the show where I bring people on who've had a lot of success in the home care space and ask them about the biggest mistake that they made in their career and what that mistake did to teach them about the way that they approach life and about business. And so, Yvonne, what's your big mistake?
I mean, I'll say what everybody says. If you want to build a business, you got to focus on what you're best at and things. So I think learning how to focus has been something I've been honing over time. And back to the mistake is that how do you listen to your customers and the clients to meet their needs, but also focus at the same time? So I learned along the way how to do that better because early in my career, I was reacting too much. Oh, this customer said this customer said that. We need to build this, we need to build that. And it's very hard to really build the right solution, the right company at the end of the day that aligns everybody together if you're reacting.
Is there a particular like feature set that you were looking to build? Is there a particular problem that somebody brought you to solve that like was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back that you think of and you're like, this is when we realized that strategy of, the tail wagging the dog just wasn't going to work for us anymore?
Previously in my career, before home care, so I'm kind of lucky that I have one foot in home care and one foot out. I worked at PayPal and also Jana. It's an advertising company. I was responsible for advertising and so on. And they were asking for, oh, can you track if they're in the app really doing what I want them to do, buying something? Or can you track this? Can you track that? And we're tracking so many different things that it became really confusing for the customer. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to solve as a company is discovery and awareness of the apps, not necessarily usage. And it was hot at the time to build all these tracking features inside the app. That was 2014, I would say. Looking back, I thought that maybe that was a wrong decision to do all those things. So it was a big learning for me that I'm applying now. And home care agencies have the similar problem when they need to focus on a geography or a type of client. So it's a common problem.
And it's this like you got to thread the needle between being so committed to the strategy that you laid out at the beginning that you're not attentive to the shifts in the market that like signal to you that something else could be an amazing opportunity. But then also like if you're pivoting every single time somebody asks you if you do this kind of thing, right? Like if your model is we do, longer term shifts and people are like, well, would you take this 2-hour visit? And you're like, maybe the market could be telling me to do this differently. Or you want to get into like, a guide program or start working with Medicare Advantage. Like there's a lot of opportunities that are new and shiny and flashy that you could start doing. On the other hand, if you are so like committed, like you're going to miss some opportunities. And so is there a pivot or a move or like a way that you listen to the market in your journey at Augusta that stands out to you as like, I learned from the mistake and I got it right this time?
I mean, I'll give a simple example so it's more concrete to everybody. And then I'll give you a specific example at Augusta. Like the example, I say someone wants a Ferrari or Cadillac. They ask for a Ferrari and then you can choose, do I deliver a Ferrari and then next day a Cadillac? Or do I actually ask the right question to the customer? What's the problem you're solving? Why do you need a Ferrari? And they'll say, hey, I want to get to the Cape within 2 hours on a Friday night. And then you find out, okay, so what have you seen that is making you not get there in 2 hours? And then they realize, maybe it's because of traffic or because the roads are too small or whatever it is. And then that opens up all kinds of new solutions with the customer. These solutions apply to other customers that may want a different type of car. And then you have a more unified solution. And at the end of the day, the customer is involved with you in that solution too. And they're really happy about the experience. And then they adopt what you're developing next. So at Augusta, I would say that's been the case where every single day is part of our DNA to just ask the right questions. How would you use this? Tell me more. I want to understand your business. And that's how the smart posts that we were building came out, understanding that caregivers didn't read the job descriptions and our customers were seeing a quality problem and a no-show problem. And we realized that they needed more awareness on their webpage on the caregiver standpoint, them being more involved, really learning about the customer.
I like that. Okay, I want to move into the next segment of the show where we talk about something that's overrated in home care. It's really hyped up, but you don't think it's actually like all it's cracked up to be.
I think that software could be a magic pill. We're kind of trained more and more to have things on demand that you click a button, everything works. And that's the direction like technology is going. So I'm not denying that this is not where it's going long term. I mean, we'll have robots eventually in our house, but solving a problem in home care is both people and technology and allying both together to find a solution in a way that our software really helps the recruiter and agency, and it needs alignment with their internal operations to work. So that's, I would say, and AI is helping us do more automation, but it's not a magic pill. Like everybody says, AI will replace workers and so on. It's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like really like, and this has been, the development curve for a while has been there's this splash of a whole bunch of really like exciting new technology and what of that is going to stick. I think there's also like for the first time we're seeing a lot of like real outside investment from venture capital and stuff within the home care space. And I think that's a really strong signal of like people are finally catching up to the fact that this is a rapidly growing industry. It's here to stay. It's immensely valuable, and people are trying to build stuff for it. But I also think like when people try to build stuff who haven't been here before, there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of like thinking that like, oh well, maybe we can just like ChatGPT the home care industry, and we're going to be able to run this super efficient shop that only has one person in it for 5,000 hours a week, and it'll be able to solve all the problems. And I think what you've said is like there's a whole people component. There's a whole process component that the top technology has to be able to speak to. And so I think one of the things that I appreciate about what you guys have done is like, you guys know the home care industry really well, inside and out. You didn't show up here yesterday and decide this is actually really easy. We're going to fix this. Like part of what I'm hearing you say is like home care is actually really complicated. And that's why there are no silver bullets, is because the process to recruit great caregivers is multifaceted. The process to get clients and serve them really well is a really complicated set of steps. Navigating the interactions between family and clients and caregivers and agency and all that kind of stuff is really like complicated. And so, identifying the areas that we can be efficient is great, but at the end of the day, like there are no silver bullets for this industry, and it's something that's really complicated.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about like recruiting, for example, pre-pandemic, you could put a poster on the tree. That's what our co-founder Sam is saying, and get 20 applications. And everything came online very rapidly. And now the expectation is everything is online, everything is easy online. But the reality is we talk about humans, right? People coming to an office and you meet them for an interview and they have to say a client. And like you said, it's very complicated. And technology is part of that for sure.
And you and I both work for technology companies. You've built a lot of different kinds of things, and so I know like the right technology can make a real difference. But I do think sometimes there's not enough thought given to the kind of rollout and implementation and adoption of that technology, because that's where it either becomes a good investment or doesn't become a good investment, is in how your people and your processes align with that new technology that we're bringing in.
Yeah, I mean, we spend an enormous amount of energy in onboarding customers. I mean, it makes a huge difference. And at the same time, it's hard to scale a technology business doing that, but that's what we believe is the right thing to do. And then how we make that easier and easier over time is going to be our secret sauce.
Okay, I want to transition to the next part of the show where I ask you, we talked about a big mistake that you've made in your career, but what's a little mistake that you see home care owners make all the time? And if they quit, it'd make their lives or their businesses like 10 times better.
I think it goes back to focus. Very simple, right? Like I mentioned about me focusing on asking the right questions. I think if you're a business owner in home care, what's focus for you? And how do you evolve that focus over time? I think is a key thing. I mean, like if you see like agencies, right? If they buy 3 territories in one go and then try to market all these 3 territories at the same time with very little resources, it's much harder than if you focus on one tiny geography where you have higher chance of success. And maybe instead of doing Medicaid and private pay, you focus on private pay, like all these things makes it easier if you're starting up. And as you grow, that evolves over time too. But it's got to be a conscious decision that you're increasing your focus or doing more, essentially.
Yeah, we have one of the things that we talk about internally, because there's like just a lot of problems to solve. Like there's a lot of things that you could focus on. There's a lot of people who do need help, but is like you just can't boil the ocean here. You've got to decide on a very specific type of demographic and, figure out how to make that a repeatable process first before. And if that's Medicaid, great. If it's VA, great. If it's private pay, great. Like, but I think picking one thing that makes sense for your business and then really figuring out how to become an expert at that before like branching out into the next thing. You talk to a ton of agencies. Is there somebody who you can think of that like has really impressed you with their focus and has figured out how to say no to some stuff that is attractive and appealing, but they know that like they've got to stay focused on the main thing?
It's hard for me to find one customer, but like, yeah, I think our top customers are doing that. I mean, they'll say, "Hey, I'm really good at attracting people over 40 years old, and that's my demographic. I'm really good at finding clients for them. I'm really good at finding students because I'm close to a university with, students in healthcare, and because of that, I'm really good at onboarding them and helping them grow." So yeah, we've seen a lot of customers doing that really, really well. And yeah,
I had an interesting conversation with someone on Tuesday of this week. We sat down and we're chatting about a lot of different things. And one of the things that she said that really stood out to me was, I want to have 100% turnover every 2 years. And I was like, why? And her vision is, and she's got great relationships with some of the nursing programs around. She's a nurse by training. And so she's like, look, I want to get nursing students to come work and get great experience and do a really excellent quality of work. And then I want those people to go on and do their next thing. And when she has caregivers who are a part of her organization who aren't currently in school, her vision for those people is that they are on a career trajectory that ultimately takes them away from her agency and has really, has scaled a pretty sizable organization with that philosophy of, I want 100% turnover every 2 years. But, to what you said, like, she's really good at recruiting college students. And so that strategy is sustainable for her and she's focused on that as the main thing. And it just impressed me with like taking a very different philosophical approach to the recruiting challenge than what everybody else does. And it won't work for everybody else, right? Like she has figured out how to do this in a repeatable way. But, to your point, like if you are able to figure out how to get folks out of retirement in a predictable way that provides high quality care, if you're able to get folks that are, were stay-at-home moms and want to get back into the workforce on kind of a part-time basis, then great. And so I think it's all about like figuring out your strengths and your opportunities and capitalizing on that, even though it means you leave other stuff on the table.
and that becomes a superpower because let's say you're really good at attracting students, then you can show students on your website. You can use that in your marketing material. And then when a student applies, they see that, oh, this is me. I feel that I would belong to that agency. And they're way more likely to follow through and show up and so on. So yeah, I've had a customer, for example, very similar to what you just said. She was accepting the fact that the audience she was attracting was transient, working in this job for 6 months, part-time, and it was part of her workflow and onboarding and so on that she was assuming that, and she was great at engaging those applicants.
The metric that people pay a lot of attention to is turnover. I think, and this is somebody who runs a company or runs sales for a company, that a lot of what we do is reduce turnover, and there's a lot of preventable turnover that'd be really nice if we could avoid. But I also think being so like enamored with the idea of lowering turnover across the board is something that can like actually restrict the growth and future of a business, because understanding that not all turnover is bad turnover, that not all turnover is preventable turnover, and really focusing on optimizing for the employee experience, whatever that looks like, I think is a much more kind of nuanced and sustainable approach than just like, we've got to make the number go down. Because like if your journey with somebody is for 6 months, make that a really good 6 months. If that employment journey is 2 years while they're in nursing school, make that a really good 2 years. And don't, I see people focus so much on the turnover metric instead of the employee experience and how to deliver the best one, whatever that is, that it, ultimately leaves them frustrated when turnover still happens.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I want to circle back to something that we kind of talked about in the pre-call, but we hadn't gotten to yet. And it's this idea of like back office turnover, where you see some trends around recruiting turnover, around scheduler turnover. Would love to hear some of the stuff that you've seen in that vein.
That was a big surprise for us. We knew about the caregiver turnover, and I'm glad you're mentioning that, there's some turnover that you should accept as a business. And it's probably true for recruiter turnover and scheduler turnover. What surprised us that this turnover is really high too. Not as high as caregiver turnover, but pretty bad. And it's very hard for the agency because if you lose your scheduler or your recruiter, then a lot of time for smaller agencies, the owner has to now start recruiting and they're not operating their business and they're not really hiring people during that time. And it's very, very painful.
Yeah, that's something that we see on the scheduler side of things too, is there's just a lot of burnout. There's a lot of inefficient processes, and it leads to people just getting exhausted and burnt out and leaving.
And it goes back to what we talked about the alignment. So if the recruiter is working overtime and working day in, day out, calling people all day, it's a very hard job. And if they feel they're not delivering to what the business needs and they want to help people, they're stressed and they burn out, absolutely burn out. It's very similar to an engineering team burning out because they can't deliver enough features for the customers.
What are some of the things that you see agencies doing to better support recruiters, better support schedulers to like reduce the risk of that burnout and prevent the owner having to step back into that seat?
There's probably a lot of angles, and I'd love to hear opinions from home care owners. In our perspective is that there should be a really strong alignment, like we talked about, between sales, scheduling, and recruiting. So they actually work together. Like we're trying to have for us like schedulers and the sales team to be accessing our dashboard and seeing all the data that the recruiter sees or what's coming, and also give feedback to the recruiter like, hey, by the way, your top of the funnel is not as good as it should be. I can see that all the applicants are coming from there. They should be coming from here because I'm not focused on, actually I have a good example of that. We talked to a customer yesterday. I'm jumping a little bit, but they were doing a competition of who's going to be the best recruiter. And there was a bonus to it. And then she said, oh, we're at 17 now and they're at 11. We're winning. And I started asking questions like, oh, tell me more. Like, why are you winning? And then she goes, and yeah, I'm a scheduler normally, and I've been recruiting before. And because I'm a scheduler, I have a competitive advantage. I know exactly which applicant to focus on. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And she said, I can place my applicants very quickly because I know exactly what schedule I need the most, which ones are harder to fill in general, which geographies are to fill. So I have a massive competitive advantage. But I'm like, every customer needs this.
Reminds me a little bit of when I talk to people who have office staff, whether it's a recruiter or a scheduler, who have been caregivers before. It's this huge competitive advantage because there's just this built-in empathy. There's all this like just nuanced decision making that those folks are able to do that give them the ability to be more effective in the role than somebody who hasn't had any of that experience as a caregiver. And so I think that and you can't always create that cross-functional experience, but I do think the collaboration between, not every recruiter is going to have been a scheduler before, but every recruiter can talk to the scheduler and can learn, what about their recruiting process could be improved by insights from the scheduling team and from the sales team and et cetera.
I mean, there's a short-term solution. They should talk more together, right? That's an easy one. Doesn't need technology, and technology will make that easier over time. But yeah, I think that's a huge opportunity.
Well, we've talked about a lot of mistakes and things that have gone wrong. But I like to end every episode on a high note. And so I want to hear about something that's happened lately in your business that you're really proud of.
I think it's realizing that we're really a staffing solution as a business. We started as a point solution where we're solving a very, very specific problem. And more our customers are seeing us more of a, workforce solution that is growing and growing every day. So it's kind of exciting for me to really feeling that we're making a difference in this industry. And, sky's the limit.
That's great. And then before we get out of here, what do you want to plug?
I mean, I came here just to share my knowledge and help people and through my knowledge and stuff. So yeah, I mean, if you want to know more about recruiting, obviously, we'd like to learn about your problems. I'd love to chat with as many people as possible. And I would say if there's one thing that I'd like people to come out with is that if there's one thing that I said that helps you in your business, just take an extra day or a few hours and just implement one change that helps you. And that will make a huge difference for your business.
Very good. Well, Yvan, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
On behalf of the team here at Zingage, thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back next week with another episode, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us a rating while you're there. It helps other people find the show. If you have comments on the show, drop me a line, david@zingage.com. Would love to hear from you, chat with you there.